Well, in last place in the A-hole standings with a 13 below 500 record is my Oakland A's, and this will lead to my fucking A's segment for the week. As I keep talking about how shitty my teams are, and it's all of our teams, we're trying to come up with different ways to to talk about these things, different segments, different imaging, whatever I can come up with to feel creative and inspired to talk about these things. So I'm making up a new one for the A's this week. I'm going to call it This Week in A's History. There happens to be two momentous things that happened in at the end of May and early June over the decades. Furthest back would be 1990. Rickey Henderson, who is my favorite player of all time, not my favorite A's player, my favorite player, the most exciting player in baseball. In many ways, the most hilarious player in baseball, with his referring to himself in the third person. Other strange antics as framing his first $1 million paycheck from the A's and subsequently screwing up the A's accounting department because he never cashed that check. It was just on a frame on a wall in his apartment or in his mansion. Just a really unique individual. Probably the most, I would argue, I was not playing fantasy baseball during his career, but he would have been the number one pick, I would think, almost every season, including this 1990 season where this week in 1990, he passed I lost who he passed, but it was the American League leader in career steals. He passed to become the American League's leading in steals.
No way,
He
really?
took over the Major League lead in steals. The next, I believe, is 1991, the first week of the season, where he passed Lou Brock to become the all-time steals leader. That's where he had the famous quote that I used in the fucking A's opening audio. Today, I am the greatest of all time, which I absolutely love. In 1990, he ended up with 65 steals and 28 home runs.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, just so much fun. Everything about Rickey Henderson is awesome. He was born on Christmas Day. I forget what year, but just everything about him is fascinating. I haven't found a great book written about him, but there needs to be documentaries about him. I believe MLB Network put like maybe a 45-minute special together about him at one point, but there needs to be full-length Netflix documentaries about Rickey Henderson, if you ask me. Second on the list, which ties into this podcast a little better, of This Week in A's History. This week in 2021, 1 year ago this week, manager Bob Melvin got his 799th victory as A's manager, passing Tony La Russa for number one in A's managerial victories history. I thought that was a nice tie-in to this podcast, where Tony La Russa is obviously managed in several places, including two of our teams here. La Russa, he definitely won at least one World Series in Oakland. I don't remember how many years he was in Oakland, but I thought maybe he'd have more than just under 800 victories. But I don't remember this from last year, but it was pretty interesting, though, that Bob Melvin actually passed Tony La Russa for the winningest manager in A's history, and then was subsequently released and basically given away to the San
Yes.
Diego Padres in this past offseason, which I railed against on many occasions on this podcast. So, the irony. The Oakland A's giving away their best manager in history for nothing.
Well, I mean, winningest manager. He hasn't won a world championship, so maybe
Yeah.
he's not the best manager.
Touche. Can't argue with that. But that wraps up This Week in A's History.
Word Hole Media.